Let me tell you a story. Albert Einstein once said, if you can't explain something to a 6-year-old kid, you don't understand the topic. My goal from this masterclass is to help you to understand everything about motion UI design. And I'm going to teach you step by step all the basics so you will be able to apply these basics, small things, and create from them some complex advanced animations. Motion UI design. What does it mean? What is motion UI design? I found this definition on the internet, and it's something like motion design is a discipline that applies graphic design principles to filmmaking and video production through use of animation and visual effects. Examples include films, videos, animated text, and web-based animations and apps. Oh my god, if I saw this definition one day, I would say, no, I don't want to learn motion design. It's too complicated. So that's why even this explanation doesn't give you the understanding of motion design is. So that's why, no. I created something simpler and easier to understand for you. What motion design? Motion design is a sequence of transitions of the elements from state A to state B. This is as simple as that. Yes, look at that. Motion design is a sequence of, we can put it down. Motion design is a transition of the element from state A to state B. Think about it. Let me give you the example. Transition of the element from state A to state B. We have state A, which is square, and we have state B, which is circle. And then we have transition from state A to state B, the animation itself. This is what motion design is, the transition from state A to state B. And this transition is happening with time. Let's take a look at the example of this explanation. I created this simple prototype here, state A, state B, and when I play this, I click here and boom. So we had a square and now we have this circle. Another example would be, let's bring this here, play. When I click on the circle, it becomes bigger. I click again, it becomes bigger. State A and state B. This is exactly what motion design is. As simple as that. You don't need to overcomplicate things. Understand that motion design is simple and you can do that. Yes, you can do this with all the elements that you have on your website or mobile app. This is another example, state A and state B, as simple as that. And we have transition in 10 seconds. Let's take a look at this example here. We have state A and we have state B. Let's click play and take a look at this animation. See what's happening. Isn't that cool, right? Probably you already saw this tutorial on my YouTube channel, but here you can see exactly how it works. So we have state A and we have state B, and something is happening in between the transition itself. This is what motion design is. Let's take a look at the basic principles that were created like a long time ago, like 100 years ago, with first like videos and animations. Here we have the example of this Mickey Mouse, and we have state A, the main state A, where we start our animation, and we have state B, where the animation finished. And back in time, all the animations were created and all the videos were created as a 24 frames per second. So in 1 second, you will see 24 different frames. And we see all these frames here. But basically, it's state A that transitions into state B. Then the state B becomes state A, and it transitions into another state B, and so on and so forth. And in 2 seconds, you will see how Mickey Mouse goes from this position into like this one. This is what motion design is. It's as simple as that. State A to state B with time. Remember that. Disney created 12 main principles of animations. And if you want to create your motion design, your motion works natural, look natural, you should follow them. But they apply to animations. To animations, not to motion UI. We'll be talking about motion design, motion UI design in a couple of minutes, but for motion UI design, we'll take only the slow in, slow out, and also timing. These two things are the most important for motion UI design. Everything else just adds some natural feeling to your animations when you're creating something like ads, when you're creating video, when you're creating, don't know, some works that can be applied, but directly not applied to user experience. When we're talking about motion UI design, we are talking about user experience. So that's why this is what you need to remember, that motion design is the transition from state A to state B in time. As simple as that. And let's dive into motion UI design. Now let's see what is motion UI design and what's the difference from motion design. When it comes to user interface, motion design becomes motion UI design. But there is one difference between these two things. While motion design is only about transition, animation itself, because we are going from state A to state B, and we have this transition, this is all animation. It's just happening. Just happening. Motion UI design also includes transition that was triggered by the user, and it becomes interaction. While motion UI design includes animations, it's a little bit bigger than that. When you click on the button, you interact with the element. When you hover on the button, you interact with that. So these are all triggers, and you create these interactions, and then you see the animation itself. Of course, if you record the entire experience, if you record your prototype, it becomes animation, and then you can share it with someone else. But the interaction itself is motion UI design. It's absolutely the same as motion design, but we have trigger here, something that triggers this animation. And it can be click, hover state, press, drag, key when you press the key on your keyboard, time and delay, which means that you're waiting for something and then boom, it's happening. You can see this example when, for example, the website is loading and you're waiting for that. You are waiting this time. And then voice. What does it mean like voice? You're asking something, for example, Siri, Alexa, or Google, what is it called? Google Assistant, right? When you ask any of them something, you trigger the feedback. You trigger the answer to your request. And this is also trigger to animation. You can animate these states, you can animate this interaction. So that's why this is also trigger. So click or tap. Click is when you make a click with your mouse. Tap is when you tap with your fingers. Hover when you put your mouse cursor on the element. Press when you press on this element and you still hold the finger on this element. Drag is when you clicked on something or pressed on something and started moving this element somewhere else. Key is when you click something. Probably you saw these forms when you click like next, arrow right, next, 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 and you see that something is happening. It's also trigger. Time delay, as we discussed, yes. This is the simplest example of motion UI design, and not all the people create these states. Why? I don't understand. This is so crucial for user experience, because if you have the button without hover state, without press state, okay, it's okay if you don't have press state, well, fine, but hover is really important because it shows that this is the element you can interact with. If you just have button without hover state, it can be an image. Even if it tells you something like click here, apply now, join, buy, just anything, when it's just like an image, most likely, of course, people today will understand that this is button if it's created right way. But motion gives additional feeling that you can interact with this element. And still, we see the same principle applies to these elements. We have state A, we hover on the button, and we have state B. Then, during the state B, while hovering, we press on the button, which becomes state A, transfers into the state B when we press on that. And the entire animation, when we click on something, this is the transition that is happening when we click on this element. Let me show you the example. So we discussed these guys, examples here, button. So we have state A, and when we go to prototype, we will see exactly what's happening. So we have this state, and while hovering, we'll have another state. And then when we press, we'll see another state. And then when we mouse up, we will see another state. Where you can find all these triggers in Figma, for example, just go here, and at the very top, you will see on click. When you click on that, you will see on click, on drag, while hovering, while pressing, key, mouse enter, mouse leave, mouse down, mouse up. And after delay also. This is possible animation. I'll show you later. But these are all the main triggers, and you can find the same or similar, not the same actually, but similar triggers in Adobe XD, for example. But here, let's take a look what's happening with all these elements. Let's click play and then restart our animation. I click R to restart the animation. I'll show you how to create these transitions between states a little bit later. Now we are learning about motion UI design. What does it mean? So we have button, and when I hover my mouse on this button, it changes its state. We have hover state. Now let's press on that. I'm pressing and it's changing its color. I see exactly that it's pressed now. And when I mouse up, done. Let's do this again. Hover, press, done. Or it can be as simple as that. When I know exactly that is button, I just want to click on that, click, done. And this was created just using these 4 different states. This is as simple as that. This is what you can create. Now, 3 different and main types of motion UI design. The first one is animation. Yes, you can create something, the animation itself that will play in time. We are not interacting with that, it's just playing. I'm putting, for example, animated video on top of on my onboarding screen, and animation is just happening. This is motion UI design. Then another type of motion UI design is micro interactions. When I'm interacting with any element of my user interface, small elements, small pieces like atoms, then I will see that something is happening with this element. And I know exactly this is the feedback to my interaction. This is why motion UI design is so important. It improves user experience. So here I click on this switcher and it changes its state from off to on. And here I have hamburger menu. I click on that, now it's closed. I click on close and it gets back to hamburger menu. Cool, right? And it shows exactly what's happening with the screen. This is important. When you're creating just 2 screens, maybe developer will understand what's happening, but probably they will just switch instantly. We'll talk about transitions a bit later, but they will switch from hamburger icon to close icon instantly, and that's it. When you're creating something like this, you see that something is opening, something is appearing, and it looks natural to a user. That's why motion UI design is so important, and that's why micro interactions are so important. And the final thing is prototypes. Prototypes or interactions. This is exactly where the entire user interface of your app or website responds to you, to your triggers. Let's take a look, for example, here, not on these guys, but even here, as you can see, I closed the window and the tab moves away. Probably you don't see that, but so let me show you on another website like Apple. We talked about buttons. See, this is the default state of the button. I hover and it changes its state. I press and it's also changing its state. Then we go to another screen. Let's see something like iPhone 12 Pro. I go to this page and I see that this is animation. This is animation type. Nothing else is happening. Now I'm hovering on this state, and this is kind of micro interaction. This is our micro interaction. And now I start interacting with the page itself. I started scrolling. I started scrolling and the page started changing. This is prototype or entire interaction. This is what you need to understand about motion UI design. Let's get back to our Figma file. Animations, micro interactions, and prototypes. 3 main types. Now you know what motion design is and what motion UI design is. Now you can go to your favorite website that you love a lot, where you can see these different transitions, animations, and now you understand that, oh my God, I haven't seen this hover state here. It looked so natural to me, but this is actually the designer thought about it. And now you can think about it and you can create these states. Let's jump to the next lesson. Steve Jobs would say, and one more thing. One more thing to know about transitions. So we discussed that there is state A and state B, and there is a transition between these two states. What do we know? What do we have to know about transitions? There are different types of transitions, but these 3 are the most important to know for a UX UI designer, or for graphic designer mostly, or for graphic designer if you're working with interfaces, because this course is about motion UI design, right? So 3 main types: instant, dissolve, smart animate, or auto animate. Smart animate for Figma, auto animate for Adobe XD. Let's take a look how to create simple animation from the beginning to the very end with using different types of transitions. And I also have example here of different transitions. So as you can see here, we have these 2 different states. Let me show you how to create just any animation. If you already have your design on the left side, like if you already have the design of your website or mobile app, they can also be divided into different states: state A, state B, state A, state B. Let's take a look how to create this simple state A, state B, how to create these simple animations. We are creating the frame, depending on, of course, on your screen size that you are going to use. And this will be, let's call it state A. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create an element inside of this state A, because we need to create the element to show what the state A will be for the element. Let's change the border radius to like maybe 10. Okay, like that one. And I changed the color to something like bluish. This one. This is our state A element. It can be a button, it can be just, I don't know, anything. In this case, it's just a rectangle. Now, let's copy this one and call it state B. What's important to understand about animations in Figma or Adobe XD, or even Keynote? If you open Keynote, you will be able to create these animations as well. So here, what's important to understand? That if you want to animate something, it means that the state B of the element should be on another screen, and the name of it should be exactly the same as in state A. Here we have rectangle 2, and here we have rectangle 2. When I change anything with this element, like size and also color, like this one, now it's still rectangle 2 here, rectangle 2, rectangle 2. It means that for Figma, for Adobe XD, for Keynote, it means that you have this connection between these 2 elements. And now how to create the animation itself. You go to prototype mode, click the element you want to interact with or to animate, you want to animate. Click on this one and start dragging this thing. Figma call it noodle. Start dragging noodle. You can drag your noodle to state B. And here, once you created this connection, you have triggers here, as we already discussed. We navigate to, this is what's happening when we will interact, when we click, in this case, on this element. We go to state B. And the animation type, which is basically the transition itself, can be instant, dissolve, smart animate, move in, move out, push, slide in, slide out. But these 5 elements, I would say they're obsolete. You can do much more with just these elements: instant, dissolve, smart animate. Let's take a look how these different types of transitions work. Instant, what does it mean? Actually, let's create, when I click on the entire state B, I want to get back, for example, to this screen, or in Figma, Command Z, you can hover on this icon that you see here, back. It means that no matter how many states you have, no matter how many connections you have, when you have this one, from this screen, you will get back to the previous one. I'll show you the example in the practice section, how it exactly works, but in this case, we'll just go back to the state A. We have instant transition type. Let's take a look at that. What's happening when we click on this? Do we have hover? No, we have, important thing, that's actually great that it happened here. In Figma, if you want to see something in the preview mode, this icon should be exactly on the element you want to start interacting with. So you drag this icon to the screen you want to start your animation with. So now when we go to this preview mode, this is what we have. Now we click on this element and it's instantly changing to this one. This is exactly what people used when they created their first movies and animations. For example, let me show you the example somewhere here. Yeah, exactly. I used this instant animation to switch between these different logos of different companies. And in the end, I will show this one. Let me show how exactly it works. We go to prototype, play. And now this is what's happening. I click to start interaction. And they instantly changing. And then we have smart animation. Instant transition, where we had this one. Instant means that we switch from state A to state B instantly, just like this. Boom, that's it. We just switched to that. Another type of transitions is dissolve. Dissolve means here you can see that something else appeared, like time. What does it mean? Dissolve also means fade in, fade out. Again, let me explain a little bit better. Let's go to the example itself. I click here and I go back, right? So I click on this element and you probably don't see that because the time is too fast. I click on that and the previous element disappears and the new one appears with this time. It's like the first element fades out. It's just like you're changing opacity of the entire screen to 0, from 100% to 0. And when you click again, like the state B appears on the screen. It's like changing opacity from 0 to 100%. This is what dissolve is. You can see this example a lot somewhere. Probably you saw these elements on different websites where you don't need to spend too much time on the animation itself. You can just create fade in, fade out, which is dissolve, and take a look what's happening with the image itself. It just like it disappears and the new one appears on the screen. This is the simplest, not the simplest, but this is more complicated way of showing that, but the simplest one will be here. Fade in, fade out. The next thing, and the most powerful one, is Smart Animate. How Smart Animate works. You have this element in state A, and Figma understands that something will happen with this element on state B. And it's not changing just states, it's changing all the parameters that changed for this element. Let's take a look. What does it mean? I click on the element and it knows that, okay, we changed size and we also changed color. So we need to switch between these two things, two parameters. Maybe we decided for state B, we decided to change also corner radius, border radius, and also we decided to change, let's imagine, position, and in addition to that, opacity. So these elements. Now, when I click on this element, it's changing its position, it's changing its opacity, color, and also corner radius. This is what you need to know about these different types of transitions. So basically, the most important of them are instant, dissolve, and smart animate. And we'll talk about them a little bit further and specifically in the practice section, but here types of transition: instant, dissolve, smart animate, and auto animate. Now let's talk about something else in the next lesson. Let's talk about the purpose of Motion UI design. What Motion UI design is used for. And I realized that there are three main categories of the purposes, like three main purposes of Motion UI design. The first one is validation. Validation means that you're creating the prototype or you're creating a micro interaction or animation, and you realize if you have to create the real app or not. You have to create the real page or not. You have to create this animation and use it in the real website, on the real website, or in the real mobile application or not. You validate the idea. This is much cheaper than create the website, than create the mobile app, to ask developers to do that. And you will spend so much time just with this communication, while you can validate your idea via user testing or via just interacting with the prototype that you just recently created. You can validate your idea. You created this prototype and you understand what works and what's not. So this is the first thing. The second one is, no, marketing will be the last one. The second one is user experience. When you created your animation or prototype, and then you can see that, we can achieve this goal, this business goal, by attracting users' attention to this element, and you're creating this animation. Then you're thinking like, well, we can add additional state to this specific section, like hover state for the entire section for the card, for example, with the image and description and the button. Instead of having the hover state only for the button, you have the hover state for the entire section. This is user experience. And if you see that people prefer when the entire card has this hover state, then it's much better, and you can enhance, you can improve the user experience. Or you can see that, for example, you have this hamburger menu, and by default, when people click on that, the screen is changing to the menu instantly. But you see that when people are clicking on that, you created the prototype for that. And for example, hamburger menu changes to close button, and then the entire menu appears on the screen pretty smooth. It creates really seamless experience with this app. So this is user experience. This is the second category. And the third one, the third one and the most important purpose of Motion UI design is marketing. When you, as a designer, can create, instead of just images, you can create the entire video of how your website is working, how your mobile application is working. You can share it on Dribbble, Behance, Instagram, just anywhere, You can send it to your client. You can send it to a potential client. You can share it with your colleagues, with your project managers, and all these people, so they will see that you're creating real products, not just screens. It gives you more value as a designer, and in this case, you will become more confident in your skills. Plus, you can charge more for your work because now you're creating a little bit more than anyone else, more than other designers. For example, I got my job at Wargaming, my first full-time job as a UX UI designer at Wargaming, only because I applied motion UI design principles. I created the prototype. Instead of sending screens with text, I created the real prototype. Then I recorded the videos out of this prototype, and I sent the video how the app is working, how this feature is working. And they hired me. They hired me because they saw that I'm thinking about the feature, I'm thinking about the product, and not about the screens, not about particular things. I'm thinking how all the interaction will happen on the screen. So, and this is my presentation to them, as a person who wants to work in their company, to them, this is what I can do. I'm UX UI designer, but I know a little bit more than other designers. So marketing is the most powerful thing. This is where you can apply all this motion UI design principles, create your interactions, prototypes, share, upload them to different platforms, share with people, and get more clients, money, likes, subscribers, followers, whatever you want, because people love what they are not able to do themselves. Yeah, this is as simple as that. So remember, 3 main purposes: validate your idea or animation, not validate, but improve the user experience of the product that you're creating, and market your designs, market your skills, and charge more for that. You will be able to find a job, you will be able to get promotion, you will be able to charge more for each particular project because clients love it. Trust me, for every product that I'm creating the video presentation. I'm creating the prototype, then I record the video of how I use this prototype. And they're so happy. They see the value. They think that this is real website. They think that this is real mobile application, while it's not. And it was just created by a designer without any coding skills, without any After Effects, just using Figma and sharing this with client. These 3 main purposes, remember about them. Just keep them in mind. And when you're creating something, think that you can improve. You can validate the idea, you can improve user experience, and you can show that you are much better designer than anyone else. Let's jump to tools and talk about them. Let's talk about tools now, because it's important to understand what tool we're gonna use for something. And there are 3 main categories of UX, UI, motion, UI design tools. Prototyping tools, I call them also interaction tools. Advanced prototyping tools that combine interaction and animation tools like After Effects that provides only animation. Prototyping tools like Figma, Sketch, or Adobe XD, they are very powerful if you know how to use them. After this masterclass, you will know how to use them as a powerful tools for prototyping. Then we have advanced tools like Principle, Protopie, InVision Studio, and Framer. They are interaction and animation tool. I'll show you in a minute what's the difference between all these 3 categories. And then we have animation tool, which is Adobe After Effects. Let's take a look at different examples of them here on Dribbble. For example, here we have a work that was created with After Effects. After Effects is a little bit more complicated. It's a little bit harder to start, and that's why so many designers are also afraid to start motion design, because they're afraid of this tool. In the motion design course, I will show that it's also much easier than you think, but it's more complicated than the tools that you use on the regular basis like Figma or Adobe XD or Sketch. Then let's take a look at other examples like this one. This one can be created with Principle. Very easy, very simple. This animation was created most likely with Cinema 4D. We are not talking about this one specifically because this is absolutely different type of animations. But some of the examples that you can find, for example, on Dribbble, they show you what different types, what different kinds of animation you can create. And after this masterclass, you will be able to understand what tool you need for specific type of animation. For example, for this animation, you can use Principle or After Effects. It will be a little bit, just a little bit harder to create it in Figma, but you can still do that. This type of animation, this is most likely After Effects or again, Cinema 4D. When we're talking about something like this you can create easily with Figma. Really super easy to create. When we are talking about this animation, this is Principle. This one, this is After Effects because something is happening while you're interacting with that. Let me show you different examples here. This entire animation can be created in Figma. I'll show you in the practice part how to create exactly this thing. But also, it will be much smoother in Principle. What's the difference between these different categories? This is what's happening with these categories of tools. Interaction. In tools like Figma, Adobe XD, or Sketch, you can create interaction only where you're switching from state A to state B with trigger. So you triggered the animation, it happened. After that, once this animation happened, you can show another animation. After this animation, you can show another one. So it always goes like that. State A, B, A, B, A, B. In the more advanced prototyping tools like Principle, in this case, I would say that Principle is the easiest tool to learn, but the most powerful one. You, in this type of category of tools, you can create something, you can create animation inside of something. When you're interacting with a website, for example, you can put some animation on top of it. So as you can see, we have state A to state B, the entire website. Inside of it, we have something that will change, something big that will change while this animation is happening. Or interaction, because we have trigger here, we have interaction here. But also we have animation inside and also some elements that I can interact with. Let me show you the example that can be created easily with Principle. iPhone 12 Pro. Let's restart this website. First of all, we see the video, the animation that is happening. Then we start scrolling. So we started interacting with the entire website. But while I'm interacting with this website, with this element, I can hover on the element inside. I can hover while I'm scrolling. While I'm scrolling, I can see that different elements are animated here. And in tools like Figma or Adobe XD, you can create only step-by-step animations. While you can create really powerful animations, in Principle, you can attach them to scroll. So while scrolling, this is what will happen. In Figma, to create this animation, you can't do that with scrolling. You can create this only with switching from state A to state B. So this will be our state A, and then I click on something, or after delay, I will go to this position. This will be my state B. Then I click on the hidden element and I'll go to this position. This what happens in Figma, but it's still great, right? That you can create the website like iPhone 12 landing page just using Figma. Cool, right? In Principle, you can do this a little bit easier, but when we go to, for example, animation tool like After Effects, it's all about animation. You can't interact with elements in After Effects. You can't interact. It's not interaction tool. It's not prototyping tool. It's animation tool, which means that to create this simple page like iPhone 12 Pro, you will need to animate all the scrolls. You will need to animate all the elements that are happening. So in some cases, After Effects is not the best tool. When you want to present something simple, like, not simple, but when you want to present different states where camera is moving, when some elements, like when you really actually creating videos, then After Effects. But when you create interactions, like websites or mobile apps, Figma, XD, or Principle. These are the main tools that I would recommend you to use. Well, let's get back to our Figma. So now you know everything about these different tools. Which one to choose? As I said, when you're creating a video, you can choose After Effects. It's a little bit harder to learn, but you can use that. When we are talking about some presentation or just prototyping for user testing or simple animations and micro interactions, 100% to Figma or Adobe XD. When we are talking about interactions while inside of another interactions and powerful websites like landing page for iPhone 12 Pro, or let me show you another example here, would be probably Google Store and Pixel 5. For this type of animation, you can use Principle. It's much easier to use Principle for that. Now you know everything about tools, and in this masterclass we'll be focused mostly about Figma, because Figma and Adobe XD, these are the core tools we are using all the time. Why we should switch to something else, to Principle or After Effects, while we can create amazing prototypes and interactions right inside of the tools we are working with? Right, because these tools we're already using, we don't want to waste time. We will use for animations the same tools, and these tools are really powerful. Let's go to the next topic. Why motion UI design is so complicated? People think like, oh my god, it's just, I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do, and like that. I know that you are not like them already, because you know the main thing. The main thing is motion design is simple, and mostly because you know now that it's as simple as changing the state from state A to state B in time. When you have this transition from state A to state B, this is what motion design is. It should be simple. All the complicated, all the advanced pages, animations are created from simple things, from super simple things. When we go to any website, as you can see here, we're changing from state A. This is our, actually, let's reload it. State A, state B. You saw the animation, right? Let's scroll. State A, state B. A, B. These are main principle. You see that we always, when we're interacting with something, we always switching from state A, when we didn't have these lines, to state B, where we have these lines. Then state A, we have just a line. State B, we have a video. This is the main principle. Once you understood that, everything will become much easier for you, and you can create this in Figma, Adobe XD, Principle, After Effects. Yes. So this is one thing that, oh, so cool. I love it so much. But another thing what we need to understand, that you have to know fundamentals. And the fundamentals are, they will be in the next lesson, but they are crucial, because we need to know these fundamentals to understand if we need to create the animation and how to create it. So let's dive into the first fundamental principle of motion UI design. The very first fundamental principle of motion UI design is understand the purpose of the animation or interaction. What does it mean? It's not necessary that your page or your website or your mobile app needs this animation. If it's not the prototype for validating idea or for showing this prototype for developers, so they understand how exactly to create what you wanted to see, if it's not the marketing purpose of it, like show your work in the animated state. So you created so many screens, like 300 screens, you created them, and then you can't show all of them, but you can show the entire website or the entire mobile app, how you can interact with. If that's not the case, and it's not the case that you can improve your page or mobile app with these micro interactions or additional animations on the screen, just don't create it. Don't waste your time. This is important. This is crucial. For example, when we go to this page like this one, and we're talking about motion UI design masterclass, you will see that there are no animations here. Why? This page is about motion design, right? But we don't have motion here. And the reason is because it takes performance out of the website, and that's why I didn't create it here. The goal of this landing page is to give the chance for people to join the masterclass. And if I add more animations here, it will take time, it will take performance, and this is not good for pages like this one. I'm not selling the product, I'm not selling the physical product, I'm not selling the service that provides animations. So that's why in this case, it's much better to have it static. So that's why I didn't create any motions here. But it doesn't mean that this page can't be improved with animations. It can be. But in my particular goal, that's not the case. So the very first fundamental principle, understand the purpose of animation or interaction. When we go to let's imagine again Apple or Google or Uber, all these animations are created to create the specific feeling from the product, specific feeling to guide you to buy the product. In my case, that's not the thing. So that's why understand the purpose. But when you have this purpose, when you want to create the prototype, when you want to record the animation, to attract more clients, to attract users' attention to specific element on the page, to show that the user can interact with this element on the page or on the screen, when you can create the mobile app and you can test it to validate your idea, when you can create the prototype for developers so they will understand that hamburger menu should change to X to close, create the animation. Create the prototype, create the animation. If not, just don't use that. This is the most fundamental principle. You don't need to animate everything. Animate what makes sense. Agree? Let's talk about the second principle that is super powerful. If you decided that, yes, I need animation. Boom! The second fundamental principle. Once you decided that, yes, I need animation, I need prototype, understand what can be animated. This is the most important principle. Yes. This is the most important principle. Understand what can be animated, because once you understand what can be animated, you can create anything. I'll show you that you can create absolutely any animation for just anything. Once you know the tool, anything, because these are the only things that can be animated. These are the only things that can be animated, especially for motion UI design in tools like Figma or Adobe XD. If we are talking about After Effects, there are a little bit more things, but they are all based on these particular things. What can be animated? Position. Scroll is also position. What you need to understand when you're trying to create, for example, scrolling of the website in After Effects, you will use position for that. Rotation. Rotation is when the element is rotating or the group of elements rotating. Opacity. Opacity is exactly when you saw this so many times, when the element appears on the screen. It wasn't on the screen and then boom, it appears on the screen from nothing. Color. You can change the color. It can be the color of the outline, or it can be the color of the element itself. size and scale. There is a difference between size and scale. We'll be talking about this in the practice section, but the main idea here is that we have small element, it can become bigger, or we have rectangle and it can be square. This is what we should know about size and scale. You can animate effects like shadow and blur. Specifically when, for example, you hover on the button or you hover on the card, you see, for example, that shadows appears behind this card. How it's created? With animation of shadow. And border radius. Border radius you can use specifically, I'll show you, you can use for Fab button. You know this circle in Android apps, when you click on that, it expands, become bigger, and now from circle we have rectangle. This is where you can use border radius. But also what's important to know, that all these things, when they applied with mask, your animation becomes even more complicated, looks visually like more complicated, but technically it has the same principles. State A, state B with the transition, while state B is just changing one of these elements that presented here on this screen. Position, rotation, opacity, color, size, effects, border radius. Let me show you the example, because probably you're thinking like, and that's it? No way. Like I saw these After Effects, I saw this Apple page, I saw this Google Pixel 5 page. It's more than that. Let me show you. That's what makes this masterclass so powerful. Let's start with this page. Google Pixel 5. Let's scroll up, reload the page. Boom, you saw this changing? It was opacity from 0 to 100% and changing position a little bit. Now let's scroll down. The element at the top, the heading, goes up. The phone on the background, this one, goes down. And on the background, this circle changes its size. This phone is moving up. Now this text appeared from nothing. This is opacity. We scroll down, mask appears here on the screen, and this element is changing its position. We scroll down, and then we see that again, mask, the new text, opacity, and position. While I'm scrolling, as you can see, this element becomes smaller. We're changing the size of it, and we have mask here as well. So we are scrolling, nothing is changing here except, again, as I told you, scroll is also changing the position. So this heading that you see was here, now it's here. It's changing the position. Yes, I interact with the screen, I'm scrolling, but it's changing position. Now you see these lines, and these lines moves from left to right. They're changing their position. What's happening next? We have this line here. But this line becomes mask, and we see that something is happening behind this mask. This mask is changing its size. And we see that this video is inside of the phone, and the phone is changing its size. It becomes smaller. It becomes smaller, smaller, and then you see that text is changing its opacity from 0 to 100%. Then we scroll. You see what's happening with this element here? It changes size a little bit and it's changing its position. We scroll down. These elements changed their size. And then we see on the background that all this ripple effect is just created with using one circle that changing its state A, which is small, to state B, which is bigger, and it's changing constantly, like this one. All these elements, as you can see, even this screen, what's happening inside of this screen is also follows the same thing. It's changing the same elements. You see this mask that appears, so the element appears, opacity, then we see the mask, that the rectangle is moving from bottom to top, and then it disappears, and we see this image at the bottom, and then we see another image here. So you see that all this page, which looks so nice, so kind of complicated, technically it follows the same principle, the same principles that we just recently discussed. And as you can see here, we also have hover state. We can interact with this element, and this hover state is nothing more than changing its color. The text is changing its color from blue to white, and the button is changing from white to blue. Then see here, we see that it's changing its position and opacity. So guys, when you take a look at all the screens, all the complicated animation that you've ever seen, they all follow the same principles. They all animate the same parameters. Here you think like, okay, but what's here? It just mask with a blurred element here. It can be just, I don't know, it can be just circle, blurred circle, black one, and then we have the position is changing and all this animation is happening. Let's create one of these animations. I know that this should be in the practice mode, but let's create this one where we have the element somewhere here, and then it becomes here at the top. To create the animation, you remember, we are creating the frame, we are creating the state A, and for this state, let's create exactly the size of the screen, like this one. And we know that the background is really dark, and it's dark, but I hope that it's not black. Let's create something gray like this one. Then, maybe a little bit darker. Yeah, like this. Now, let's write the text, something like Motion UI Design. Let's make it white, and let's make it bigger, 120, like this. Maybe too much, 90, yes. And let's make it bold. So this is our text here, this is our state A. In addition to that, what we will do, we'll create another rectangle that will be our mask for this element. In addition to that, we will also create this circle somewhere here that will be exactly the same color as our background. And we also change the layer blur to something like maybe 60. We don't see it here because this is what we have on the background. What I see, I probably want to make it a little bit stronger, like this one. Yes. Now let's bring back the color of the frame, this one. And what I'm going to do is, so we have text there, and we have this mask. So what do we need to do for state A? For state B, we need to move mask from here to the right. And also we're gonna use it, this one, like, yeah, to the right. Let's make it a little bit bigger. This is our mask that we will move. Then we have text at the bottom. We want this mask to be only applied to this circle. So now what does it mean? Again, let's switch off this one. You see that mask now applies only to this section. Why do we need that? Because when we have something here outside of the mask, and this will be, for example, our phone that they have on the page here, this phone. Let's change to 30, so we know that it's phone. We know now we created this mask, so it will not apply to the phone. It's hidden only here. But we also have text. So now when I will change the position of the mask, I will show the text, right? Now let's bring back the color here, and we have the phone that will be moving from bottom to top. Now when we created all these elements, it's better to call them somehow. Like here it will be phone. Here this will be our text. This one will be our mask, and this will be our circle. Now let's create state B. I just duplicating this page, and for this state, I'm going to move this mask to the right. I'm going to move all these elements with text, mask, and circle to the top. But in addition to that, I'm going to move the phone, but not as much as text, or maybe even more than the text itself. Actually, let's group these elements together, and let's put, see, group 2, this one group 1. I need to call it group 1 so we have the same element. Let's move the phone on top of this group, on top of it, on top of the text. And now let's create the animation itself. We go to prototype mode, and on click, this will be simple animation, on click, smart animate, and I want it to move is in, is out in 5 seconds, 5,000 milliseconds. So now, and then when I click on this again, I wanna go back. So now when I click play, we see that our phone is somewhere here. I click on this screen, and in 5 seconds, this animation is happening. This is exactly what we saw recently on this screen. Let's scroll it with 5 seconds. This is what we see. I continue scrolling, and it disappears. And I can create this state by state because this Figma, it has its limitation. Principle doesn't have it, but Figma and Adobe XD has this limitation that you have to create state A, state B, state A, state B, like a stack of animations. And now I click again, I'm going back to the previous state. Another example would be if we create something like, let's create another screen here. Let's imagine you want to create this animation where the text is moving in different directions. I will use, for this case, let's imagine 0, 0, 0. I'll create text position. I'll call it position. It will be also white. Also, I'm going to use it as big size. Maybe I'll change it to black. And I'm going to change the feel from the feel of the element to the stroke. And now for this text, I will duplicate this text multiple times, like this one. I will group it together. I will move the group down. I'll take these two groups and we'll change their position to here. This is our state A for the screen. And then let's create state B. I want these groups moved to this side, and I want this particular group to move to this side. Now I want this animation to happen on hover. So when I'm hovering on this entire screen, while hovering, smart animate in 5 seconds. But in this case, I want to have linear animation. The difference between linear is in, is out, is linear. It means that the animation has the same speed in the beginning and in the middle and in the end. This is linear. Is in, is out, it means the animation starts slow, in the middle it goes faster, and then it stops slow. Is in, is out. It's like when you're going to throw a stone, for example, then from the very beginning, it starts slow, then in the middle it will be really fast, and then it becomes slow again. So this is in, is out. Is in means that the animation starts really slow, like it's starting, is in, it's starting its position, is in, and then it becomes faster. I'll show you actually. Let me show you different types here. Like we have linear, but in this case, let's show it like 2 seconds. Now, that's it. That's the only thing that I need to create here because it's hover, it's not click. when I present, remember, we need to bring this guy here. When I go here, on hover on the screen, this animation happens. When I'm not hovering on the screen, it goes back. And this is linear. As you can see, the text is moving all the time with the same speed. When I'm changing this time into is in, and I go here, it starts, as you can see, it starts slow, but then the final point is really fast. The next thing is out. In this case, it's the opposite to is in. It starts really fast, but then it stops slow and stops. Is in, is out. It means that it will start slow, it will end slow, but in the middle it will be really fast. Let's reload this one. Yeah, it looks natural. Some people can tell you that don't use linear animation, but in the practice part, I'll show you that linear animation can be really powerful. And even in this case, linear animation works much better than is in, is out. These things that you can create using these elements, these changing these parameters. Remember the principle, understand what can be animated. And only these things can be animated. Only these ones. Trust me, there are no other things that can be animated. In, let's imagine, in After Effects, probably you know that there is trim paths, that there are some things like text when each letter changes its blur to, then it becomes sharp. But all these things just applies, they have the same principles as here. For trim path, they use changing the position and masking the element. For blurring the text, they use effects, blur. For wiggle effect, they use changing position. So all these things, even when you see 3D animation, when something is just moving on you, this is again, this is changing only of the position, and it's happening just in additional dimension. And that's it. Remember these particular things. All these powerful things you can create just with Figma using simple things, click, and you can create websites like landing pages for Apple, Google, or just any kind of mobile apps. Really. Now you guys know so much, you know all these principles. Let me show you a couple more examples where I created this thing. So when I'm moving my mouse, as you can see, it changing its position, and it's created in Figma. It's changing, all the elements changing their position. When we go to this thing, to this screen, let's reload the screen. So we have this page, and this is our state A. Let's imagine I open the website. You will learn how to create this. It can be something like educational website. And in a second, when the website was loaded, this is what happens. All the UI elements appears on the screen. Then what can happen? This text can move its position, change its opacity, and another element will appear on the screen. Then with mask, you can change this text. You can use this particular principle when the mask is moving with text for creating different forms. That forms will be the form we are filling in the login and also password. You can use this particular example. And then you can create this. As you can see, the background now is blurred. So we animated the background here. And also we animated the text itself. All these things you can create with simple things right in Figma or Adobe XD. Another example would be here. Let's go. Hover. This is what you can create. Let's imagine you have a portfolio, you have text on the left, and on the right you have animation. You have this animation, but this animation is happening only on hover. So I'm hovering, and I see how my design is moving up, and it also has a shadow at the bottom. But this is created just by changing the position of this element and changing the size of the element at the bottom. The next example is we have this box. We have this box. Let's animate that. Let's rotate and change the size. Let's rotate and change the size. Let's do the same. Let's change just the position of this element. Now, let's change the colors and add this shadow here. Let's go back and see how it's done. So we have these three elements, state A. We have these three elements, and only this element changed its state. It changed the rotation, it was rotated, and also it changed the size. Then this element did that, and step by step we combined these elements all into one box. And then for this box, we added shadow, and we also changed, as you can see, let's take a look at this element here in the design mode. It has stroke, which is blue. And this element, let's select the same one, it doesn't have stroke now. But also on the background here, we have, what is that? We don't see it because opacity is 0. But if I'll make 100%, you see it's already the shadow. Let's move it back. And in this case, on this screen, this shadow already has 50% opacity instead of 0. I applied the same principles that you know now, state A to state B, with changing only that parameters. I wanted to create this animation. The purpose of this animation is to present the idea that in Figma you can create these animations for boxes. The same thing, actually, what I can do, I can just change. What I don't like about this animation, that these elements are in the different positions and they're combining themselves into the box in the wrong direction. So that's why what I'm going to do, I'm going to make some changes here, and you will see that these changes will apply to our animation. So I'm changing now only the design and the position of these elements. Now what I'm going to do, so this element is here. Let's change the position, and then they will be combined into one box. But this element is here now. That's it, that's enough. Let's do this again. I'm changing this element, I'm changing this one, changing state B to this one. State B, this one state A, state B. I'm changing only the position in this case. And now, boom, we have a box. Let's take a look at the final example that I already presented to you. Let's go to prototype mode and move this one here. And now this is, let's imagine the website for a photographer. This is the first state, the second state, the second state, the next one, and boom, John Smith photography. This is what you can create again in Figma, because now you know all the principles that you can apply, all the fundamentals, and you can do this right here. What we have, state A, and then on click. But what if I don't want it to be on click? I can set after delay. So after 1 second, I want this screen go to this one. I will do the same for this. After delay of 1 second, I'll go to the next screen. After delay here, I'll go to the next one. And here I already have delay. After delay. Now let's take a look how it works. Let's reload our screen. I'm not doing anything. I'm here with you. Boom, boom. And now can you imagine you can record this animation and share it on Dribbble, on Behance, on Instagram, just anywhere. You can do this yourself. As you can see, this is simple as that when you know the fundamentals. If you don't want to have huge competition, don't share these principles with anyone else. You will be on top. But of course, I'm kidding. You can share these principles with other people. But first of all, practice, create all these things. Let's dive into the next, not section yet. Let's discuss one important thing. And this important thing is here. What's next? What's next? What should I do next? So I understood all these fundamentals. I understood the principles of animations. Now I know that it's simple and I can do this. What's next? Next, observe and practice. What does it mean? Observation is one of the most important things for all the designers. If you want to become great designer in any area, motion design, UI, graphic design, observe. Take a look at the works of other people, what other people are doing. Go to Dribbble, animation, and start looking at all these things. Try to understand how they were made. What are the main principles here? What they applied? Like here, mask, right? Mask and position. Then we scroll, hover state, mask and position, size. These elements appear, opacity, scroll, which means that position. Go and take a look how all these things are done. This is your homework. Go and find the designs that you like. Here, as you can see, looks incredible, but you just learned how exactly to create these things. I showed you how to create it with Apple website, iPhone 12 Pro. Now you can create this right in Figma or Adobe XD without any like principle or After Effects. You can do this with changing state A, state B, state B, state B, and it's just changing position. Now here also we're changing position, and on the screen we use probably dissolve, or in this case not dissolve, probably they're changing just opacity, and then we reload the animation. You can create this now in Figma. Now you know all these things. So this is observation part. Go to your favorite websites and take a look what's happening with the elements when you interacting with them. So we see that these were changing opacity mostly and position. This is just animation, so it was created most likely in Cinema 4D or After Effects. But everything else, for example, this thing is changing the size of this element. So it's small now, but it was big. It was big, and the opacity of it was lower than 100%. It's about 60%, 100%, and also downloading is changing to time. And this is what's happening once it's here. Downloading is changing to this text, to the duration, and this is instantly happening. So your homework, go to your favorite websites and take a look what these people did, so you will be able to do the same thing for your websites, for your mobile application. And the next thing is practice. Don't only look at all these things. Your results depend only on you. When you practice, now you know all the fundamentals. I gave you everything that you have to know about motion UI design. Yeah, there are some small pieces that we haven't covered in this masterclass because this will be covered in the like huger part, like motion UI course, where we'll be talking about timing, easings, After Effects, trim paths, how to animate this more complicated stuff, but mostly animation. But everything else you got here. Now go and practice, go and create these animations where the text is moving, where your website in your portfolio is also animated now. Just go and do that. Hope you learned a lot from this one. This is not the final section, but still, this is the most important section to start. Then we'll be talking about practice, how to do particular things, how to create micro interactions and everything for premium and gold package. And also for all the packages, you will also learn how to export this animation and how to share your prototypes and animations with developers so they will be able to see them, and how to export these animations for you to users for user testing, and also to clients, so they will be able to interact with the website or mobile app that you created, and they will tell you, oh my god, this is my designer, this is, oh, I'm so happy that I hired you. This is what you can create now. Don't skip the practice because this will bring you the result. And I'll see you in the next section.